Remember the Houndmaster, that one character that I said you should not purchase back in November when the chapter first released? Well, it seems like behavior took the very negative reviews on the chapter's pages close to the heart, as the Houndmaster is now absolutely worth to buy compared to before, as they made her a bit less buggier and significantly more easy to play with, to the point that some players think she was overbuffed. But is this true? Well, here is my opinion and the changes I would give to her in depth. So first, let's talk about what was the problem of the Houndmaster that led to this chapter having such negative reviews. And this is something that everyone who has played her knows about. She was very bugged on release, to the point that I could confidently say that she was as buggy as original Knight was, but not to the level of twins as some players exaggerated. Her power was most of the time unusable. Snug would sometimes help the survivors instead of helping you, and she felt clunky overall. However, even with all these problems, something that was clear is that the Houndmaster was a very fun killer to play as and against. Whenever she worked, playing as her felt satisfying, and hitting that skill shot with a chase or a snipe felt rewarding, even if she was actually not as strong as other killers that could do everything she did but better, like the Knight or the Cenobite. For the survivor side, outside of some jank with the animations and the dog, dodging the redirect felt good, and she was one of the most satisfying killers to play against, on par with characters like Wesker and Hillbilly, at least personally. So overall, under that rough, bugged power, lied one of the most fun killers they had released in a while, a killer that included mobility, tracking, and a chase power on her kit, which also had a very high skill ceiling that was flashy to see. And that's what the vast majority of the player base agreed on. It was the bugs that made her frustrating to play as, not the power concept, and the way she was released was unacceptable. So what the majority of us expected was for the devs to fix her bugs, or at the very least, make her not as buggy as she was, so at the very least, she was playable. Well, despite some of her bugs being fixed, behavior also decided to significantly buff the Houndmaster, putting her in the same situation as Overdrive Hillbilly and post-rework Sadako, as the killers that jumped the most tiers in terms of strength. If you check out her statistics on Nightlight, you can see that she went from a killer with a very mediocre kill rate of 52% to an immediate jump to the behavior golden number of 62%, and that's only on 3 days. To put things into perspective, I wanted to show the difference between the original Houndmaster and the new version and all of the buffs and changes. But let's go in depth on them. First of all, let's talk about the bugs they fixed for her. The most notable one that completely changes the way her power feels like is the way they changed the logic at which the dog acts upon biting someone. Previously, the dog would bring the survivors to the point where you started the chase attack, and this led to some survivors being boosted away from you, or led to pallets making her power useless. This was introduced in the second bug fix, and this change is actually huge as it makes her feel significantly different. Whereas before, she could be compared to a killer like Deathslinger, now her power is like a remote, stronger version of the Cenobite's chains or the Clown's bottles. This change already fixed one of the biggest complaints many players had with her, and this is the best change behavior has done in my personal opinion. But to add on to that, they also increased the hindrance penalty for when survivors get beat by the dog to 10% from 3%, an insane 7% increase. In other words, if you as a survivor get beat by the dog, it is now basically a guaranteed hit unless you have a teammate that can help you nearby, where they might be the hit instead of you. But let's be honest, this is great. Why should a killer be punished when they hit their power? If you get hit by the dog, as a killer you should be rewarded with a hit. That's what makes a killer satisfying. The problems come with the next two changes we're going to be talking about, and that is the vault speed for the dog, as well as the cooldown of the power itself. So before, if you used your power on a vault, the dog would slowly vault it and then continue with the direction of the chase. You could use this in interesting ways to get snipes to survivors in some situations, but overall many agreed that the vault speed of the dog was too slow. So what Behavior decided to do on bug fix number 2 is increase the vault speed of the dog down to 0.45 seconds from 0.9, making it basically half of the time it was before, and this feels incredibly busted. The speed of the dog vault is so fast that you can just prepare the chase before a pallet is put down to put survivors into lose-lose situations unless they perfectly time the pallet thrown to stun the dog before they get bit. Make it too late and you will get bit by the dog with the pallet thrown. Make it too slow and now the dog will vault the pallet and immediately hit you, giving the Houndmaster time to break the pallet, but funnily enough, her power is so strong that breaking pallets is a bad idea most of the times. And here is the part where I've seen a lot of discussions online. You might be wondering, why is it a problem when the Houndmaster does it if other killers like the Deathslinger, Pyramid Head or Huntress can do this too, where they confirm hits when survivors are animation locked. The difference here, at least how I feel it in my matches, is the risk/reward from the Houndmaster, which currently it feels like it is zero risk with a lot of reward, except when survivors play very well, but which by that point you can argue that killers like Hillbilly or Blight are also weak because some survivors can dodge their attacks. Balancing a killer to the utmost best kinds of survivors is, in my opinion, a bad idea, as the vast majority of players are simply casuals or above average survivors, and against them, she feels extremely powerful. Let's take the Huntress as an example. The Huntress is capable of hitting survivors on vaults, but she gets slowed down dramatically when she lifts a hatchet. She needs to have the correct angle to the survivors in order to hit them, and she has 7 attempts to do it before she can reload, all while being a 110% killer, so if she misses, survivors get a lot more distance. And remember that even after the hit, she now has to go around the vault or the pallet in order to catch the survivors back. The same happens with the Deathslinger, only he has to take time to reel the survivors back to the vault, and if he misses, he loses a lot of distance and has to reload. And with the Pyramid Head, he is indeed the stronger out of the two examples, but that's all he has going for. Pyramid Head has no mobility and mediocre tracking, but he compensates by having one of the best anti-loop powers in the game, so without zoning, he would be on the weaker side. And then we have the Houndmaster. Compared to the previous killers, she does not have to aim. As long as you point the chase to hit the vaults, the dog will automatically vault it, no matter the angle, and since Snug can hog-tech the collision in order to reach the vault, this makes her significantly easier to use compared to the Huntress, Pyramid Head or Deathslinger. She can hit on 90-degree angles because the dog will fast vault no matter what. To put things into perspective on how fast the vault speed is, the fastest speed at which a survivor can vault a window is 0.5 seconds with a rush, which requires the survivor to take the vault straight. So even at best, Snug will either get a bite or a grab no matter what. And then we have the 90-degree angles, which for survivors would make them medium vault, and that takes 0.9 seconds, which was the same time Snug could bite them before. Let's not even talk about pallets. If a pallet is thrown and the survivor vaults it, it takes them 1.1 seconds to do so. Since Snug will vault it at 0.45 seconds, this means that as long as a survivor vaults a pallet, and as long as you make the dog vault the pallet, that is a guaranteed hit. Survivors simply do not have any time in order to dodge the dog, unlike with the Huntress or unlike with Pyramid Head. My point is that the Houndmaster's attack is a guaranteed hit on vault locations as long as you can hit the vault with the dog, which is way easier to do than with any of the other killers in the game. With Huntress, you have to aim at them, same with the Deathslinger. You could miss if you didn't hit your shot. Same can happen with Pyramid Head, the attack is delayed, giving survivors a reaction time, so if you hit it at a tight angle, you can miss the judgment attack. But Houndmaster's dog will always jump the vault faster than a survivor can vault it no matter what. If you do it too fast, the dog will directly injure the survivors. If you do it too late, the dog will bite them behind the vault, giving you plenty of time to reach them. She feels like pre-nerf Vecna and Scamper Chucky, where you want to leave pallets and never break them because on those points, it's basically a guaranteed hit. But does that mean that she has no counterplay? Well, just like the rest of S tier killers, the killer player can make a mistake, and as a survivor you can force her to make a mistake. The Houndmaster's power does not work in all angles of loops, as there are some where you simply cannot use the dog and instead you have to play normally and break the pallet. For example, in the haystack loops in Coldwind, or in some loops on indoor maps like in the game or RPD. So what happens when a survivor dodges the dog or you miss the dog? That's where the next change comes in, the power cooldown. When the Houndmaster released, her power cooldown was 5 seconds, which actually was even longer because the dog has to return to you in order for the cooldown to start. In the very first bug fix, they decided to nerf the cooldown to 4 seconds, and that was pretty alright. Then, for some reason, on the same patch with the Volt Speed buff, and the next patch after the bug fix, Behavior decided to nerf the power cooldown to 3 seconds, and this is yet another problem that she has, because even if you miss, you are not as punished as any other killer in the game. If you miss with the Huntress or with the Clown, now you have one less use of your power, which will force you to reload and lose a lot of distance. With the Death Slinger, if you miss once, you have to reload, giving away a lot of distance as you are a 110% killer, and with Pyramid Head, missing the attack will slow you down by a lot, giving survivors time to vault or make distance from you. And then there is the Houndmaster. If you miss the dog on the first chase, you can still redirect it after you correct your mistake. So the better you are as a player, the harder the counterplay for survivors is. And let's say that you completely miss your chase attack. Well, unlike for the rest of killers, you don't have to reload and waste distance. Since you are a 115% killer, you can just keep moving while your power recharges extremely fast, barely giving survivors any distance. So in other words, you can use the dog in order to zone survivors even if you miss, because your speed will not be as impacted as the other characters, and since you can redirect Snug, even if your first shot misses, survivors still have to take into account the possibility of you redirecting your dog. In my opinion, this is actually really good power design, as I love the mind games that it puts on both sides, and when you hit a shot, it feels very rewarding. When you make the killer miss, as a survivor it feels fantastic. But the problem currently is that the cooldown of her power is way too short, barely giving survivors any counterplay if they do end up missing your dog, as you will get the power quite fast. And unlike all of the killers that she is compared to, like the Cenobite, Huntress, Deathslinger, Pyramid Head, where if you miss, you lose a lot of distance, with the Houndmaster, you have the fixed search speed boost. On the bug fix number 1, Behavior fixed an issue that prevented the Houndmaster from getting the speed boost she gets when following the trail of the dog while on search, so you can just catch up back to the survivors with it. Imagine if your yellow bottles as the Clown gave you an even stronger speed boost. They activated immediately, they track survivors when they inhale the gas, and you constantly reload the bottles while chasing survivors. I think it's fair to say this is very oppressive. But the worst part of the cooldown is the fact that when you do bite a survivor, you can use your power almost immediately after the basic attack cooldown. Anytime you hit survivors with the dog, since he is close to you, you get your power in 3 seconds, which is almost as fast as the basic attack cooldown, giving her the ability to 2-tap a survivor incredibly fast compared to the other killers in the game. You don't have to waste distance and reload after you hit a survivor like the Deathslinger does, all while being a 110% killer. You also do not need to completely stop in your tracks like the Cenobite does. Currently, Houndmaster has the best 2-tap capabilities out of any killer outside of a very good Huntress main. This ability becomes even better when we put a current bug into the equation, as sometimes as a survivor you might have noticed that she releases the dog without any warning towards you. That is because as long as the Houndmaster is talking, she does not whistle, which is supposed to be the counterplay for survivors. Obviously, this is a bug that needs to be fixed, as it is currently, and for me personally in my games, the Houndmaster feels stronger than characters like the Huntress, the Cenobite, or even Wesker. She feels like she fits in the A tier, and I am debating whether she's stronger than Singularity or Dracula, for example, as I am not that sure. So, in conclusion, the Volt speed buff as well as the cooldown was way too much, and it's clear that they overbuffed her just to compensate for all the bad taste she left in her mouth when she released, and so instead of leaving her as a weak and bugged killer for Christmas, they decided to make her a strong but bugged killer similar to the twins. So why did I make such a lengthy video to cover her? The reason as to why is because I do not want behavior to jump the gun and nerf this killer into the ground, just like they did with Scully or recently with Chucky, because that is a very scary precedent. And considering the amount of complaints I have seen online, I fear that behavior will go to the route of over-nerfing her instead of putting her in a nice middle ground, as they have done various times in the past. I have seen a lot of wrong comparisons online explaining that she is okay because Huntress or Pyramid Head can also do what she does, but that is not correct and their situations are completely different. The only changes she needs in order to still be very solid and fun is to nerf the volt speed of the dog to something in between the two values, like 0.7 or 0.6, to not make it as easy as it currently is, and nerf the cooldown of the dog to 4 seconds instead of 3, as I feel that was fair for both sides and better than how she used to be. Houndmaster, in my opinion, has a really good power design. Without the free hits on volts and with a slower cooldown, the Houndmaster has the chance of sitting somewhere in the low A tier ranks as a nice, fun and interactive killer to play against. What I don't want is for behavior to listen to the loud complainers and nerf this killer to become worse than what she was before. After all, she is still bugged a lot of times, and the reason why it's not as bad anymore is because she is that good. But anyways, please let me know what you think of these changes, and as always, thank you for watching and have a nice day.